I am alcohol-free for 9 months. I'm loving my life. I'm loving the way I feel. And I'm accomplishing a lot now. That was another thing I wanted to do. I wanted to accomplish more because I feel like, I got 10 really, really good years left in me as far as building something positive that could affect people's lives in the future. I was born in 1963. My parents were professors. By the time I was 8, my parents were divorced and my dad left. And he kind of just disappeared from the family for a long time. I was the last of 4. My older brother and sister had moved out pretty much by the time I was 8 or 9 years old. And so I really just pretty much had to take care of myself for the most part. I made my own breakfast and my own lunch for school. I got myself up with an alarm clock, caught the bus. Typical latchkey kid of the 70s. I pretty much had free reign of my life. I went to school and I wasn't a great student, but I had a lot of good friends and was able to get through the best I could. By the time I was 12, which would have been 1975, I would have been, I guess, in about 7th grade. The majority of my friends, their parents were still married. And so it was a little bit more unusual back then to have divorced parents. So I felt a bit like an outcast, I guess. And in 7th grade, I met these 2 guys in school, and they were super friendly to me. They could see that I was a little bit on the downtrodden side. I just was sad, and I didn't see my dad really for years. I had access to my dad. I knew where he lived. I had his phone number, but he never really wanted to do anything. So, and my mom, she worked 2 jobs, so she was real busy and just trying to make ends meet all the time. And so it really kind of left me unsupervised at a very young age, all through my years. And so I met these 2 guys, and their parents were also divorced. I guess I was a little bit more like a middle-class family, and where my neighborhood was, and these guys lived more in a poorer section of town. Not that we had any more money than them, because my mom wasn't making much, and she was just making ends meet, like I said. And so these 2 guys sort of took me in, and I was always grateful for them for doing that. And my life really changed after I met them, and mostly for good, believe it or not. But these guys were largely unsupervised as well. We would do our schoolwork, and we all just kind of would converge on the weekends. And my mom, she allowed me to go spend the night with these guys. But I would go on the weekends and spend the night with these 2 guys at either of their houses. One friend lived with his mom and sister. The other friend lived with his dad and 3 siblings. And I would go home Sunday night and back to school and kind of start all over again. But so we did that 7th grade, 8th grade, and then we got into high school, and it was just, it was just life. In the late 70s, I guess early 80s, where I grew up, it was a very alcohol-oriented town. There was a bar on every corner. I mean, like, there was bars everywhere. Just have a few beers after work or whatever, and go out on the weekends and have a few. And then as I got older and when my kids were grown, I got into wine and became somewhat of a wine connoisseur, and went to wine country in California a couple times a year, and we enjoyed that, and evening wine, and it was just a lifetime of alcohol. And now fast forward, I'm 62, and I now have been drinking for years. So I'm celebrating by quitting. And that's what I'm doing, and I am now 9 months sober, and that kind of makes me sound like an alcoholic, and most of you will probably argue that I am or was. But honestly, quitting was actually easy. That is the truth. Quit drinking late December, and now it's mid-September, and no problem. You know, I once in a while I do think about it. I'm not going to lie about that, but it wasn't hard. And what ended up happening was I lost about 40 pounds. I got into intermittent fasting, and I'm going to do a whole video on that and how I did that at some point in the near future. I'm feeling good. You know, I don't miss the dull hangovers that I used to have. You know, it wasn't like debilitating or anything like that, but I just always kind of felt like crap in the morning, and just had this dull, fuzzy brain feeling all the time, and I got tired of it. And now I am alcohol free for 9 months. I'm loving my life. I'm loving the way I feel, and I'm accomplishing a lot now. That was another thing I wanted to do. I wanted to accomplish more, because I feel like, you know, I got 10 really, really good years left in me as far as building something positive that could affect people's lives in the future. I'm doing these YouTube videos for many reasons. One of the reasons is I want my kids to be able to look back and have some documentation of me, my voice, my videos of me. Videos are so easy to make now versus when my parents were in their mid to later lives, and but the technology is far easier now than it was. So, but let me know in the comments, where you're at, and if you quit drinking at some point in your life, or you never were a drinker maybe, and good for you. But I'm done. I'm out. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.